And God, today we are grateful for this opportunity to gather, for this opportunity to share, to spread the word and to share news of your goodness, to share news of what is happening in the world with your children. Would you bless all that happens? Would you care for all of our hearts and minds today? In Christ's name, I pray. Amen.
Good morning and welcome to What's the Message? I can't believe how good this show is going to be today. I'm so excited. I should have written out a script because I'm totally off script with my enthusiasm this morning. We're going to be joined by some special guests, but first I want to introduce, because here at Message Magazine, the oldest Black Christian magazine that's been around for more than 120 years. We're going to be talking about some deep historical stuff today. And I'm so pleased to be rolling with our co-host, Baron Savory, who's out on the West Coast this morning. Good morning, Baron. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Good morning, Carmela. Listen, your excitement has traveled a time that we're going to share talking about some important, some weighty subjects that have been on the minds and in the heart of America for many, many decades. What a show we have today. So we want you to do one thing right now. Let somebody know that What's the Message is live right now. We want you to share this. Let others know what is happening, what is going on right now.
Yes. First up, we got to introduce our good friend of the show, friend of Message Magazine, somebody that I look up to, a legal mind extraordinaire right here this morning, Orlin Johnson, our friend. Orlin Johnson is the Director of Public Affairs and Religious Liberty for the Adventist Church in North America. And Orlin, thank you for coming and joining us this morning, because, you know, we're rolling like we're CNN. I know we're not, but I need to talk to somebody about two things. Number one, I want to talk to you. We wanted to talk about the Oakwood Academy, Seventh-day Adventist Academy down in northern Alabama. A couple of weeks ago, and we got to go through this really quickly. A couple of weeks ago, they were in a basketball tournament with the Northern Alabama, I believe, High School Basketball Athletic Association, something like that. Either way, they were on their way. They were doing really well. And at the semifinals, they had to forfeit because their game was scheduled on the Sabbath. And because they observed the Sabbath, they had to forfeit. So on the tail end of all of that, we hear and we learn that perhaps there was at some point some acknowledgement that they were Sabbath keepers and that people were, you know, at least aware of that, and maybe they shouldn't have expected any kind of thing. Why is this why does this implicate religious liberty? And can you give us a quick rundown, a quick primer about that?
Sure. Really what we're looking at here is that when you have issues regarding your religious accommodation, and it's not much different than somebody asking you to work on the Sabbath. It's an opportunity for you to engage in an activity and you have a personal religious belief. The federal law allows you to be protected and to have someone accommodate you, especially when the accommodation is reasonable. So the idea that even somebody could come to you and say, well, I'd like for you to sign a letter saying that you're not going to exercise your First Amendment rights, we call that unconstitutional. And so the idea that even you're able to kind of like sign away your protections is something that the law actually has a lot of rules and regulations against. But the long and the short of it is that there was an opportunity for the game to be accommodated a few hours later, which would have allowed Sabbath to occur. And the other teams have agreed that they were okay with it as well. And when they came back to the Alabama High School Association and say, well, we have it worked out, their response was still no. And said, well, if we allow you to have an accommodation, then it gets chaotic and we have a lot of schools. We have to keep shifting around our records and opportunities. And at the end of the day, they wanted them to know it was just an inconvenience that they were not willing to assist.
Now, let me break in right there, because I understand we have pictures. What are these pictures of? What was going on this week?
So we actually were really kind of surprised that the governor of Alabama picked up this story and actually came out with a public statement and said that she needed to get some answers as to why young men were not going to be allowed to hold up their faith and still engage in sports. And in addition to that, the governor invited the high school team to come down to her office in Montgomery. To meet with her. And she thought that this was something that was important enough that she enjoyed the fact that there were young men who were standing up for their faith. And the fact of the matter is that from my understanding, the governor is very serious about her faith. And as a result, he wanted to meet these young men and talk with them. And so we went down with the team. We were in Montgomery. They had a chance to get a tour of the Capitol. They took them through all the tunnels that all the legislative people run through. And, they had a chance to take their pictures. And she asked them all to tell them one thing that they got from the whole environment. And one of the statements that actually came out in her press release yesterday was one of the young men simply told her that what he got out of it is God sent us a test and we believe we passed.
And we believe we passed.
Orlando, let me ask really quickly. Orland. my apologies, Orland. Can this set a precedent moving forward, not only in the state of Alabama, but are other states taking notice and watching to see how the First Amendment plays out in this particular case?
Absolutely. And to believe it or not, we've had other cases similar to this. There was an Adventist high school in Portland that in 1996 had the same situation. They ended up fighting it and going to court, and they ended up having policies changed there. So we anticipate that, at some point, we're hoping that maybe they'll change their policies on their own. But if they decide not to change their policies on their own, then we have to do what we're charged to do, which is to protect religious freedom, not just for Seventh-day Adventists, but for all. And Adventists have a reputation of protecting individuals' religious freedom, regardless of your religion. And so that's what we will do. And I just enjoyed being able to let these young men know that when you take a stand, your church is behind you. And we're not just going to pray for you. We're going to come out and do some pushing and shoving if we have to make sure that you're protected.
All right. I love it. I like that. But, and, I think people need to understand it, because that's not something that you not necessarily. You have to be cognizant of what is happening.
Absolutely.
And these young men said, no, we're not going to go this way, but also realize that there's some law, there's some constitutional protection behind you taking your stand. And I think that, maybe to the average person who didn't get counsel, they wouldn't know that, you could take this further.
Absolutely. And to be honest, when there was this conversation about there was a letter that the school had signed, and I had a lot of people calling me with their head hung low saying, wow, can't believe we have this letter and this is going to undercut us. And I just told them that letter is nothing but Exhibit A if we end up in court. Doesn't mean a thing. There's no one you and tell you by letter or anything else that you can, quote unquote, contract away your federal and legislative laws that protect you. Your First Amendment rights, no one gets a chance to tell you that you can sign it away. That's just not how it works in the country. And that's exactly what have been taking place here. Now, we hope that the comes to their senses and, decides that they want to come to a reasonable accommodation. But if they don't, then we do what we have to do.
Like we used to say, tee it up. No, just kidding. I don't want to be in that position here. Okay, so I'm going to transition because this is why this show is so important today.
Carmela, just 1 second. The composer Mary is trying to get in. She's been on hold.
Okay. We'll let her
Okay,
in.
so-
That voice that you're hearing is one of our upcoming guests that we are so happy to meet. I'm going to introduce you, Robert Mack, in just a second. But I want to talk and give some background and some context to what we're doing today, because we have the cast of Emmitt Till, a new American opera, with us today. And yes, this is an exciting opportunity to talk about this in a different context. But Orlin, before we let you go,
Sure.
we have had federal hate crime laws on the books for decades, right? We have, state laws. We saw this with the Ahmaud, in response to Ahmaud Arbery's unfortunate demise. We saw that what happened to the men that were charged with that. So after 100 years, 200 attempts, both houses of Congress look like they passed this. This is sitting on President Joe Biden's desk right now. Why is this so significant when we already have this hate crime legislation and protection?
Well, some people were a little offended by the idea that they think this is more symbolism than substance. But the fact of the matter is most pieces of legislation are a combination of both symbolism and substance. And the way we describe individuals from a societal standpoint is also important. I mean, we had laws regarding murder on the books for centuries. However, we still thought it was important to designate what a mass killing was. We thought it to designate what a serial killer was. We thought it important to designate what a terrorist is. And the reason that we wanted to do that is society does want to separate who you are under your circumstances. So the fact that we have hate crime in place, there is something specific about lynching that took place in this country that was part of a diabolical, in my opinion, view to cause fear and intimidation to a specific group of individuals. And to call out that specific language is a statement of society saying that we had this wrong and we want to document that now that we have this right. So on one hand, I get the idea that we already have laws that can protect things, but sometimes society needs it to be more specific. After the 1964 Civil Rights Act, we still needed a lot of different laws because apparently not everybody understood what that meant. And that specificity is important, especially when the culture and society make statements as well as the people in the legal community.
Awesome. Orlin Johnson, thank you for joining us and dropping in this morning just to give us some knowledge, drop some knowledge here this morning, right, Baron? Thank you so much. You can hang around if you want, but we want to shift gears right now and reintroduce the cast and the creators of Emmitt Till, a new American opera. And look at the timing of this. Our good friend that went to school with us, Gerald Cunningham, is a part of the chorus here. But I had already heard about Emmitt Till, a new American opera that is going to be debuting March 23rd. Is that correct? It's John Jay and at the Lynch Auditorium. How unfortunate a coincidence is that? But I'm just going to leave that.
We always say Gerald W. Lynch Theater. We never say Lynch Theater. They Gerald W. for obvious reasons, right?
Obvious reasons. Well, let me introduce here this stellar group of talented, amazing people here today. Baron, we've got Ms. Claire Koss, who you heard speaking just now, and you see her. Claire Koss is a playwright, a librettist, and activist, convinced that together we have it in our power to create a just and safe world. Thank you for joining us today. I just love this. This is already good. Mary Watkins here is an American composer and pianist in jazz and classical music. She's right there in front of her instrument, bright and early, because I understand you're out on West Coast, just like Baron. Is that right?
Right.
Thank you for joining us. And then last but not least, for right now, we're going to be joined by the mezzo-soprano, Lucia. Am I saying her name correctly? Lucia?
Lucia.
Lucia, like St. Lucia Bradford, who will be joining us because she has taken on the weighty and heavy role of Mamie Till Mobley. And then last but not least, we had an excellent conversation yesterday, and I told him we're stuck to, we're friends now. I'm sorry. Robert Mack is a well sought after tenor who has performed extensively in the United States and abroad. He is the general and artistic director of Opera Noir International. Is that right?
That is correct.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you all here today. And Baron, if I'm just rolling over you, just make sure that you just jump in here.
listen here. I am honored to be in the presence of this company, of this group, telling this story, which is a huge story. And I'd like to, if you don't mind, Carmela, I'd like to just ask a real quick question to Miss Cost there. How exactly and how long does it take to actually pen out an opera, or to be able to work through the process? Because you have to understand the weight of the story you want to tell, and then you have to put it to paper. What is that process like for you? As you've done it throughout the years, and then specifically for this particular story, telling of Emmitt Till.
Well, it's a great honor and pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you so much. And it's good to see you, Mary. Good morning. Hello. Well, I could go back to when I was 7 years old to begin to answer that question. When I first became aware of race in a very startling way. My mother was from New Orleans, and I was visiting the grandparents with her. We were on the St. Charles streetcar, and I was 7, and I jumped on, and I picked up one of those for colored only lacquered signs with the little brass hooks, and I moved it back a few seats so that I could have a seat by the window. And my mother said, "When you move that sign over there, all these people can't sit down." And I was mortified. I mean, it was like, I felt embarrassed, and I felt angry, and I felt hurt. Anyway, I took the sign and I moved it back. And I wrote a poem a couple of years ago, "These Hands Touched Jim Crow." It was a major guidepost, a station along my life for that awareness to come. And we lived in New Jersey, and this was a visit to New Orleans. That was the very beginning. But I was a student at LSU in Baton Rouge when Emmitt Till was lynched. And I was starting my junior year, and nobody wanted to talk about it, absolutely zero. And it just, it was so appalling, the silence, that I couldn't bear to stay in the dorm with my dorm mates. We didn't have sorority houses there then. And so I got permission to move into International House, which was a French chateau where they were hoping to encourage the French culture in Louisiana based on their history. And I had a roommate from Guatemala, and I finished my education at LSU in 3.5 years to get out of LSU and come back up north. So that denial of what was a land of terror on this white campus, and my ability to just move myself into an integrated situation with graduate students was a major turning point for me in terms of activism. But fast forward to the early 90s, after our friend Audre Lorde died, she's a poet that is well known, I think, now, especially now. She's had a resurgence of interest in her work. I woke up at dawn one morning, and I just felt this kind of spiritual mandate to write about Emmitt Till. And it's how could I, as a white woman, enter this story? and the role of the teacher came into my mind. A person who cares, but who's silent. So what good does your silence do if you don't speak or act? And it's kind of what Martin Luther King said, the greatest tragedy is the silence of the good people. So I wanted to give an arc to this character from where she cares but is silent to where she takes a first step towards the responsibility and speaking as a teacher to her students. That would make a major difference in her life as well as their lives. So the denial, getting rid of the denial of reality was. Now I know that I maybe it was Audrey who said it to me that, Black people don't like other people telling their stories. And, Black people walk a different road, and you might think you can understand that road, but you don't, and you never will. So I thought, how can I write about this as a white woman? And because I felt like the impact from the Emmitt Till murder had an impact on my life. So I felt it was partly my story too. And when I approached writing the play first, my conviction was that this tragedy is shared in the way that the tragic history of our country is shared. White people as perpetrators and witnesses of white supremacy have a stake in this story. Everybody has a stake in this story.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I came to approach the writing of the play first,
Right.
and then the libretto.
So we had the play, and now we have the libretto that is the foundation of this new opera that will be debuting in a couple of weeks. I want to come here to Ms. Mary Watkins that I see you here. And before I do it, I just want to ask you one last question, or not a last, I almost lied there because I'll be coming back to you for a minute. But Claire, with what do you attempt in this opera? And from what I understand, everyone, this opera is amazing. A 24-piece orchestra that's part of Mary Watkins's design, right? 2 choruses, 1 Black, 1 white, 8 soloists. Robert Mack is one of them. But in this opera, how do you approach, or do you attempt to approach, to bring that conviction that you feel to the members of the audience? Do you try to do that? And if so, how?
I try to do it through the character of Roanne, who is the teacher, who goes from silence to needing to act for her own wholeness and her own self. It's really, and then the heroism of Mamie Till and the Wright family and the sharecroppers to testify in the courtroom where every white person was armed and every Black person had been disarmed before entering the courtroom, and death threats, all of them receiving death threats. The incredible courage. And I just really think everybody should be much more familiar with the courage of the people in this story, the heroes. So we have the most exemplary example of courage, and we have the most exemplary example of degradation and white supremacists.
Yes. Well, Robert Mack, let me talk to you for a moment, because you have taken on, you're not only a director of opera noir, but is a Black opera group, right? What's the right word? Company, right? So talk to me. You are in the role of 14-year-old Emmitt Till.
Yes.
Am I the one that's frozen, or is everybody else?
No, I'm fine.
I don't. No, you're not frozen.
All right. Talk to me as a man of faith. I want to ask you about something. And because I know you are, I
Yes.
watched part of the ABC documentary For All the World to See. I think that's what it was. And I'm curious about the faith of Mamie Till and the faith of her family. And they kept talking about the verse in the Bible that says, vengeance is mine.
Yeah.
And so for me, where does religion and faith for you factor into this whole story?
Oh, that's really good. Well, I can't walk, I can't talk, I can't do anything without my faith. It is the way I was raised, but even after I was raised by my parents to honor the Lord, my Savior, and grew up in church from the day I can remember. Okay. However, but once I became a man, I was able to develop my own understanding of faith and religion. And it is something that I need, and it's something that I can't move without. I'm not speaking to you without it. By the grace of God, it is grace that gets me up every morning. And it is his grace that keeps me moving, talking, and doing the things that I do and sharing with other people, like in this moment. And I'm clearly aware of that. You know, aside of my upbringing, I'm aware of that because he has spoken to me. He talks to me. That spirit, that energy speaks to me daily. I know that. I'm very clear about that. But speaking to the role of Emmitt Till and taking that on at the age of a 14-year-old boy, I can easily put myself there. I was 14 at one point in time, and I have a very good memory of my childhood for some reason. I know what I was doing in the 8th grade, 8th or 9th grade. That's usually your age at 14. Yeah. You're usually in that grade. I tried to not read much of the story. Obviously, I knew the story. My parents told me about the story. I have read The Death of Innocence, which is Mamie Till's book. Yes. And if you read that book, I don't know if anyone's read it. I would assume some of you have. The book really is about a mother's love for her young boy. It's not until the real end that you hear about the tragedy. So I take it from Mamie's point of view. I can take it and think of my mom. I'm the youngest of 4, and I was terribly spoiled. I know that now as an adult. I didn't know that then. I just thought I was a kid, whatever. But I know that I was spoiled. So I had a great relationship with my mom, and she doted over me and hugged me and teased my hair and hugged me and all that kind of stuff like that. So I had real affection, physical affection and emotional affection from my parents. So I look at, when I read Mamie's book, that's what I hear. That's what I see. I see my mother. I see even my father. I see how they cared for me, made sure I got what I wanted out of life as much as they could, And so I can be that 14-year-old boy very easily. I just go back into my memory. And knowing the tragedy, I try not to read too much about it now so that it's not fresh on me. I just want to stay a 14-year-old kid, especially coming up close to the production of it and the performance of it. And so I just stay away from the story because imagine this 14-year-old boy had no clue something like this could even be possible. Not even possible. He was a jokester. He was a young kid, from reading stories and getting different things that I've read. He was a jokester, and he loved playing with his friends and riding his bike, in Chicago. And you got to remember, Chicago in 1955 is different from Mississippi. Right. 1955. He was on he was on his way to Mississippi. He was hanging with his cousins and stuff in Mississippi, just having a good time. That's a different lifestyle in 1955 in Chicago, even though as a whole, the world still had its racism. Yeah. Chicago wasn't free of racism. No, not by a long shot in 1955, but racism in 1950 in Chicago is different in the South.
So, Robert, let me ask you this. And I love that you're speaking about Black Boy Joy. I love that you talk about the joyfulness of Emmitt Till and who he was, being a jokester and everything of that nature. But there's a difference between someone who can execute something musically and someone who sings from the soul, someone who sings from the heart. It just sounds different. It could be the same notes, but it sounds different. How do you get into that space when the curtain rolls back and you begin to sing? How do you put yourself from a place of a musician, from a gifted vocalist that simply executes the notes, but one that is actually telling vocally the story from a soul stirring perspective? What gets you into that space to bring people into Emmitt's story?
There's several things. I can answer that very easily, actually. Doesn't mean I execute it very well all the time, but I think I do. It's about selflessness. Yeah, learning to sing and doing the singing and all that kind of stuff. Yes, I want to do it. I want to execute it musically. I want to be effective in what I do technically. However, it's not for me. It's for the audience. The story, any role I take on, everything I do with myself vocally, whether I'm singing in church, whether I'm singing at a wedding, whether I'm singing at a funeral, whether I'm singing in an opera house, whether I'm singing in a concert hall, once I learn the role, it's not for me. It's for the audience. As I was explaining to Carmela the other day, something I learned from a drama teacher many years ago. I used to love to take acting classes. And he said to me, Robert, I want you to go into the mirror and I want you to completely strip yourself naked. And if you can, get in a three-way mirror. He said, and then I want you to look at yourself from head to toe. Then when you get there, accept every part of your body, front, back, head to toe, completely naked. And he said, that way, you're very aware of your body, you're very aware of your soul, your spirit, all that who you are, and you accept that. And then you say, this is good enough for somebody else to see. This is good enough for somebody else to take on. And then the other thing, he said, I want you, this is a different teacher. My mother had passed in 2005 and I was taking some acting classes. And my teacher knew this. He said, Robert, I want you to go outside the door. When you come back in, as soon as you touch the knob that opened the door, I want you to take on the moment that somebody called you or told you that your mom passed. And then he said, I want you to come and sing the piece that you have to do. I was like, I can't do it. I was like, no, I'm going to break. He said, and that's where I want you to learn the lesson. The lesson is for you to have all the emotions, bring it right to here, this fine line. And then it's for the audience to cry, not for you to cry. The moment you cry, you have now been selfish because now the audience is concerned about your tears, or is he going to make it musically now? And they should just be in the moment. So he said, I want you to practice how to find that fine line between bringing all yourself to the performance, but being able to just give the performance, not fall into the performance. Wow. And that's a very ethereal thing to do. It's hard to do. And when I did it, he made me do it again. He said, no, you didn't do it. He said, I could see it. He said, you're getting ready to tear right now. He said, I see the tears. He said, if I see the tear, if it didn't call for it in the script, you've gone too far. If it calls for it in the script, you've done the right thing. He said, but I want you to go. And he made me go out of that door 5 times to where I was able to deliver this piece and just have all the emotions, but not break, not tear. Come to that emotion, but not tear. And then he made me sing the same song. He said, now it's a joyful song, and I want you to laugh throughout the whole thing. He said, that's how you find all your emotions.
I can only imagine that this show, Emmitt Till, would have you laid out with all these emotions. I see that Miss Lucinda Bradford, Lucia Bradford. I'm sorry. Lucia Bradford has joined us today, and I'm going to come to her in just a moment, the mezzo-soprano that's taking on the role of Mamie Till Mobley. But before that, I want to talk to Mary Watkins. Mary Watkins, we're talking all of this. Am I saying the right name? Yes.
Watkins.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I understand that you grew up in Colorado, first of all. Is that correct? What part of Colorado are you from?
I'm from Pueblo, Colorado. I was born.
Really?
Yeah.
I lived there as a child.
What?
I lived in Pueblo as a child. Very interesting.
That is unusual.
It is. And that's why I wanted to ask you about that, because, what's funny, when I'm reading and I'm preparing, and I understand that you were in Colorado when Emmitt Till was murdered, and you are somewhat isolated, I guess from the Southern Black communities. Is a difference when you're there in Pueblo, Colorado. And I would sure like to know, how did you work through that trauma as a young person there in Pueblo, Colorado?
Oof. Well, I know that I was working with it, or I was struggling with it. I don't know when it started, but it started before I can remember when. My mother tried to prepare me for this. My mother was from Kansas. She grew up in Kansas. And there it's very different, like in Colorado and those states. There are not enough Black people to segregate us. This is during the era of segregation. And there wasn't really enough of us to segregate. So we dealt on a daily basis with other white people, or with white people. The neighborhood I grew up in was actually all white. We were the only Black family there. And my mother, I think, from the time I was very young, tried to prepare me for racism, for the cruelty, for the, she wanted to protect me. And I'm trying to think when my first experience, it happened when I was pretty young. We were not really protected because we weren't segregated. And so on a daily basis, we had to deal with these neighbors and people like that. Our neighbors were very nice neighbors. They were good neighbors. But once I went to school, that's when I remember that it started, because up until that time, the little other white kids that lived in the neighborhood, they all came to our house and we all played in the backyard together. And but once I went to school, I started hearing things like chocolate bar, that was I'd be called chocolate bar, and other little things. And that was the one that that's the one that stands out in my memory. And so
we're losing part of you when you sit up close to the screen. I was hoping you could pull back so I could see your face. I'm just seeing the top of you. There you go. That's good.
Perfect.
That's good.
Okay.
But tell me this. So you are from Pueblo, Colorado. It's a different kind of time. And so where are you pulling from as you get this music as a composer for this opera?
I am pulling from I think it's from the church, really. See, when I was a kid, we went to a church that was kind of small, and it was on one side of town, and then later we decided to go to the church that was on the other side of town. And I had never seen probably more than 25 Black people at any one time. And the new church that we went to, there were probably 50 people, maybe more, but it seemed to me that there were hundreds of people. And this was a saving grace to me. Right away, I was already playing piano. So they had already got me started playing piano in Sunday school and that sort of thing. It was seeing my people that looked like me, and listening to them sing, and that just took over my life in a way. It was the thing that saved me during the week. You know, like I go to school Monday morning and I'm there until Friday. But then I have this Sunday experience, with my people. And this was something that, you know, it's almost like a quiet tape or something that was playing throughout the week that kept me, in spite of being called chocolate bar or the N word, because that definitely that. I stayed to myself a lot. I was usually the only Black kid in my class, especially in grade school. I think my experience is probably different from a lot of people, because I didn't grow up in the city. Well, you know, Pueblo is not it's not urban. No.
It was tumbleweeds when I was there.
Well, it's not. Its population was something like about 99,000 people, and it still is. You know, so I had to talk to myself. I had to convince myself that these people were not better than me, even though they were trying to make me think so. I usually excelled in school anyway. I played the piano, and none of the other kids did very well. And I played in the orchestra. I was good in sports, and I was good in art. I used to win art contests, you know, for drawings. They'd have them twice a year, and I won several of those. So this all helped me.
I can only imagine how much it helped you and guided you, and having that experience of being in almost an integrated environment, but really actually kind of the opposite of where Chicago, where Emmitt Till was, and it being kind of a concentrated environment surrounded by that. Tell me a little bit, and Lucia, going to be coming to you in just a moment as well. Tell me a little bit about the composition, about the process that you went through. Give us one little window into when you put your hands on the keys and you were listening to the story. Give us just maybe a 1 minute, maybe 2 minute response to how you were able to help compose that with the experience that you had from Pueblo all the way through to the writing of this play and helping to compose it.
Well, I had always wanted to do an opera about the civil rights movement, and of course it was very huge. So I was ready for this, and I thought it was the spirituality of the people that just really drew me in. I could hear them in my sleep. I could, you know what I mean? It's like that is what enabled Mamie Till to get through what she got through. It was her recognition of really the oneness of life, really the oneness of humanity. That's why she was, I think, able to not hate, or, you know, she was able to take something and do something good with the tragedy that had happened to her. She was a very spiritual woman, and that's what gets us through. There's no other way. It's realizing that God is with all of us, in and through us, and living your life from that place, knowing that.
Yes. Well, Ms. Lucia Bradford, who obviously is a teacher when she's not the the opera star. On what grade do you teach?
So hi everyone, good to see everyone.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, and thank you for having me. So I'm the music teacher in Chinatown, so I teach all the grades, pre-K through 5th grade.
Man, listen, God bless you, pre-K all the way up to 5th grade.
Amen, God bless me.
Listen.
I'll be the Corey, I'll be these kids. No, they're good. They're good kids.
They're good.
Yeah.
Well, it must be very exciting for them to have their teacher perform in this very riveting performance of the Emmitt Till opera. I can only imagine that there is a spectrum of emotional landmines as you approach this. Which one is your personal, I can't step there, or I need some prayer as I go through this? Talk to me.
I was going to say, whenever I get to, I think it's the last scene, Act 1, Can You Undie Me, Mama?
What is that?
The first time I was reading through it, I was like, oh my God, Mary, are you kidding? I have to I am like really saying everything that I'm seeing. I literally had to stop. I called my friend. I was like, girl, you're not gonna because, she was so excited that I was doing this. And I was like, and then it got to that part and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know if I can do this. That scene up to this round, because we've done a number of, revisions and all of that over the years. And up to 2 nights ago when I was doing it, I was like, it is so, I try to actually not connect. Like when I'm rehearsing sometimes, I got to make sure I have the right notes and the right rhythm. So I can't connect to it like certain things. But Mary, you wrote that thing right there. And that gets me every time. That scene, and then Robert comes, oh my God. It kills me every time. That's the only scene I'm like a little nervous to see, because like Robert was saying, you can't like really go like with tears and stuff. And I want to every time. And I said, you know what, let me cry in this house. So when I get on stage, it will all be done, because I'm not a mother. Okay. I'm a great aunt. I've lots of nephews. And I do that auntie, huh? Yeah, I'm a great aunt. I do the overnight thing one night. Okay. And then I have them during the, I'm great. But I don't have any children of my own, but I mean, I can just imagine that my connections are, I'm not too far from 35 when, this happened to her. She's a teacher, educated woman, she wants the best for her son. She absolutely adores him, loves him. I even the way she speaks to him, and I love how Mary wrote, like, when I say, watch your mouth, young man, I could totally like hear myself doing that if I did have a kid. So I love how she's so pulled up, but then, she just, it's like after that first scene, she is just like, oh my God. And we're just there for like a long time. And then, then we get into Act 2 and then the aria comes. So it's a real roller coaster. But to answer your question, I would say, the scene that kills me is just that last scene at the end of Act 1. It is really, really difficult. And then after that, then, I don't know, I feel like I can play the activist and all of that, overcoming tragedy. But she did it so eloquently, so exquisitely, and just watching her and hearing her. Oh, it's like, it's a tall order. It is, but yeah, I'm very honored.
Listen, I could tell this is going to be powerful. Just that. Did you hear those quick little notes?
I heard it.
Carmela?
I heard
Did you
it.
hear them?
Sorry, I had to think it. I'm sorry. It's like, we've been rehearsing. So
Yes.
I was like, I want to hear more. I want to hear more. So I'm going to have to go and see it live.
Yes. And we'll make sure that we put in the comments where people can come and see. A couple of years ago, I did an interview, or we talked to Lucy McBath. Her son was Jordan Davis, the one that was shot in the parking lot of the 7-Eleven years ago. And she talks about being a part of the club that nobody wants to be in. Mm-hmm. And how now the mothers now, Sabrina Fulton, the mother of Trayvon Martin, the mother of Tamir Rice, you can see Eric Garner's mother even now. And so now here in the middle of Women's History Month, I just want to go around the room. We've got 2 more things and we're almost done. I know you all have to go and I just can't tell you how honored we have been to have you here. But talk to me about the lesson of strength that's going to carry us through as women. And I'm sorry, Robert, you're included in this to go ahead and comment, but talk to me about the strength of the woman in this story and how it applies today.
I think it is a testament of what we've known all along as women, that we are, I don't want to say stronger than or whatever, but I just feel like our strength, it's different and we can endure so much. And not just us, we always as women, whether you're a mother or not, you put on other people's stuff, whether it's in a relationship or your parents, we just feel that obligation. And somehow we can just, I don't know, I feel like God really just equipped us with something really, just strong. And I'm loving the love and the respect and the honor that I'm seeing all over the world now. I mean, so the kids came up to me, "Happy Women's Day, Ms. Brack." I was like, "What? Oh, thank you. Thank you very much." And like, I'm loving it. I think it's wonderful. I think, this is our time. And this is, Black girl magic time, honey. We are shining and really coming out and showing people what we've known all along. We are amazing. God has put a strength and a power in us, and not just Black women, but I just, for me as a Black woman in this time and in this moment, it's a good thing. Yeah. Really exciting.
Yeah. Well, I want to say to that, I grew up with a family where my mother had 9 sisters or brothers. Yeah. So I was around many women, obviously. Mm-hmm. However, I think it's no mistake that women can bear children and men cannot. Mm-hmm. Doesn't weaken the man. Women have a certain strength that comes with nurturing. That nurturing comes with caretaking. Mm-hmm. That caretaking comes with community and family. And then you get into, we have the power to galvanize. Mm-hmm. Men also have their level of strength. Their strength comes to upholding women. I never hear a man say, I never hear too many people speak about that. That's the strength of a man, to uphold women. And it's just as powerful as what we see women do. So we have our different strengths, and that is the beauty of it. But women just have always had that, let's pull it together. Let's pull it together. That's the way I like to simply say it. And Mamie had to do it. She had to do it for this woman to say, no, let them see his body. I want the world. She used that word in particular. Yeah. I want the world to see what they have done to my child. Yes. The strength that it had to take that, to even bear that, because that means she has to see it again. Mm-hmm. And the photographer who took the picture, I think his last name was Jackson. I forget the man's name. For that to be on Jet magazine, yes. Mm-hmm. For her to know that that picture, that image is going to be on Jet magazine, which was sold, or at least throughout the United States, mm-hmm. The power, the strength, the faith that she had to have to do that. cannot be unrecognized.
Right.
Cannot be unmentioned, if you will.
I saw for the first time last night that not only did she want people to see his body, but it was because she got on the phone to keep them from rushing to bury him.
Oh, yeah.
So that no one could see. So they were going to bury him and cover everything up, but she wouldn't even allow them to do that. And, at that point, she didn't know what was happening. She didn't know what he looked at. She said, no. And that's God's providence.
But Carmela, just think about the whole thing. I know we probably got to go, but we got to think of the period of the time and what people were. I'm glad you mentioned that, because they were trying to shun this whole story. Mm-hmm. If you look at it, it was in Sunflower County that this happened. Mm-hmm. There's no memorial. There's nothing in Sunflower County about Emmitt Till. To this day, the memorial, which has been shot, torn, they've had several placards and different things up, bullet holes thrown, they had to put another one up, paintings thrown all over it. That's not even where he was killed. They have it at the and not even at the grocery store where the whistling happened. They have it at the meat market, which was next to that grocery store, next to that store. Because that store where he whistled at her is torn down. I mean, it looks terrible. Yeah. But they put all this money into revitalizing and making the store next to it the memorial.
Right. Yeah.
That's by design. So everything about it from the beginning was to hide that story.
Right.
And Mamie didn't have foresight that they wanted to do all of that, but she knew it could not be hidden.
Yes.
Which that then got people like Rosa Parks to say, we can't deal with that anymore. Martin Luther King, who actually had Emmitt Till in his famous speech. I don't know if everyone knows that. It was in that speech. It was only when he got to the Lincoln Memorial, because he changed the speech a little bit, everything. Yeah. But he took Emmitt Till's name out of the speech. And I don't think it was to slight the story. You have to, all those who are in public, at certain point, if you're going to make a movement or a statement, you have to be careful wording, what you're going to say, how you're going to say it. And he had twice had Emmitt Till in that speech. And I wonder if I could just read that just for one quick moment.
But really quickly, because I want to come back and we're going to.
Well, we don't have to, but I just wanted to make that point.
Yes.
He was in that speech. Yeah. And Martin Luther King, once he got to the Lincoln Memorial, took it out. And then the speech became famous, after that. But not many people. There's a recording. With my parents just happen to have this recording. We have several, the LP of Martin Luther King's speech. And I have one with Emmitt Till's name in it and with his name not in it.
Wow. I didn't know that. Yeah. I'm coming to you, Mary, and then Claire. You're going to, when I come to you, Mary, go ahead. Talk to us. What is the message? That's the name of the show. We got 30 seconds left. What is the message here?
Oh, goodness, what is the message? I think the message really is love. I hate to say, sounds kind of conquers all. I mean, you're able to. This is the thing that kept Mamie alive and able to do what she did. It's big love. It's the God love that enabled her, that gave her the strength. And that's where our strength comes from, whether we know it or not.
Yes. Come on, Claire.
There's a quote from me.
Ending where we started out. And I want to say this before we go, because, you talked about it and you even asked about this because, you've talked about what it is, the complicity of silence and what that means and how it works. Talk to us, close us out. What is the message for people now?
I'm going to quote Mamie Till Moodley. Okay. You must continuously tell Emmitt Till's story until everyone's consciousness rises.
Wow.
Only then will there be justice for Emmitt Till.
Wow.
Yes. Listen, I need everybody to know about the opera, right? A new American opera, Emmitt Till, a new American opera debuting at the John J. Gerald Lynch Auditorium. And that's debuting March 23rd and 2 nights only for now, right? Once everybody sees this, who knows? Who knows? We'll probably be coming to see you at the Richard Roberts Theater downtown. And that's my prayer, because you all have put so much heart and soul in this. But March 23rd and 24th, look it up. Listen, thank you for joining us. Baron, what do you need to say before we go? We got to say what?
Listen, I'm so excited about this. If you are in New York, the DMV, whatever the case is, buy your tickets now. Go and see this amazing historical story in operatic form. It's going to be dynamic. It's going to be powerful. And we're so glad that you have joined us today. These are the conversations we're having on What's the Message.
See you next time. And thank you for joining us.